Hi, this is Dovid Orlofsky. Welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends on Torah Anytime or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, as always, it's good to have us together, that we should all be together, especially during difficult times. We have a sponsor this week, an anonymous sponsor, as a schus for Klal Yisrael, how appropriate. So let me give the briefest introduction to obviously what we're going to talk about. I've been doing this podcast for some time now, and you've more or less figured out what it is that I try to do here, what we try to talk about, and to empower people and give them a positive approach to life and to Yahadus, to themselves, to their family, to the Jewish people, to the world around us. That's more or less. And as a rule, I don't deal with current events. I don't deal with specifics. I remember when there was an attack on a synagogue in Pittsburgh, an anti-Semitic attack. I didn't discuss it. It was a tragedy. And somebody wrote me and said, "I'm really surprised you didn't speak about it." And I said, "Everybody's speaking about it. I don't think you need me to speak about it also." That doesn't mean that I don't recognize the magnitude of the tragedy, but it was a sort of a tragedy that, although you can never say this about the Jewish people, but it was localized. The reason I say you can never say this about the Jewish people is because Kol Yisrael Rebim Zelazeh, we're all responsible for each other. During the Bayless trial, they were attacking various quotes from the Talmud. One of them was, the Jewish people, a Jew is called an Adam and not a non-Jew. He says, "You think we're animals?" So the Rav who was on the witness stand said, "No, but there are many different words for people, for human beings. Adam is a lashon that is specifically relating to shleimus, because the Jewish people are one people." He says, "Look, there's a Jew on trial here in Russia, and the entire Jewish world is watching. If there was a Russian on trial, would all of Russia be watching? Would they all be concerned?" So, of course, it's just like I say that, what can I tell you, tragedy and dealing with tragedy and these sort of things are not really my strong point. I rather try to give positive building messages. But what happened this past Lag BaOmer is something that cannot be ignored. And I have dreaded doing this podcast for exactly this reason. But let's just deal with this for a second. This is the least localized tragedy that one can imagine. There were Hasidim and there were Bnei Yeshiva. Yeah, the Hasidim and a Bachar from Brisk. There were old, middle-aged, young. I live in Har Nof. We lost a 13-year-old boy. My grandson's Rebbe was lost. It wasn't an Israeli tragedy like a usual terrorist attack. There were people from different communities all across America, in Canada, who were caught up in this. So it spanned both of the North America and Israel. There were Haredim and Dati Leumi, people who were involved in this. It was just such a cross section that it was like everybody was represented in this tragedy. The other aspect to it is that it was on Lag BaOmer. As one of my daughters, who is particularly traumatized by this event, said to me, it changes the nature of Lag BaOmer forever. Lag BaOmer is this happy day where, ironically, we celebrate the end of death. the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. And here, by Rav Shimon Bar Yochai's kever, so the magnitude of this, 45 individuals lost, is just staggering, and most people are in shock. So, what's the first thing we do? Find someone to blame. Who was responsible? Why did they close off the exit? Why wasn't this repaired beforehand? Everybody starts mentioning. I mentioned a tweet 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I pointed out there was going to be a problem. I knew this was coming. Listen, as long as I can remember, Jews have been going to Har Meron on Lag BaOmer night. And even though the tragedy always could happen, it never did happen. It was the first time that it did happen. Which means that on some level, whatever special hashgacha we had as a people with HaKadosh Baruch Hu watching over us, he took that away. Let's make it worse. It's right at the end of an entire year of Magefa. I mean, these are plagues of biblical proportion. The Gemara tells a story to explain a halacha. You're not allowed to wear shoes with cleats on Shabbos because we're afraid you're going to dig up when you're walking. No, because there was one time that there were Jews who were hiding from the non-Jewish enemy in a cave, and somebody was walking with cleats, and it echoed through the cave, and the people panicked, and they ran for the exits, and more people were killed by being trampled to death than were killed in the actual. No, that's over 2,000 years ago. And to this day, we don't wear cleats on Shabbos because Jews were trampled to death. So it's coming after a Magefa and a situation like this. And it just happened so quickly. There was no rhyme or reason. There's no enemy. It's such an amazing thing. I pointed this out, that part of the effect of the coronavirus was that everybody has to stay alone. People can't come together. I used to say, when I would speak before Tisha B'Av, I'd say, it's getting close to Tisha B'Av and everybody's making sure, take another drink, find something else to eat, because I know I can't eat or drink for 24 hours. And I would say, you also can't say hello. So make sure and use this time on Erev Tisha B'Av to say hello to all the people that you want to say hello to, because you can't greet them on Tisha B'Av. But that doesn't seem to bother us as much, I'm afraid. But the entire coronavirus period was measured by stay away from each other. And finally, they tell us we can come together. And we came so together that the pressure ended up destroying 45 people. So right away, family members asked me, how do you explain this? And I gave them the correct answer. And they said, that's too pat. I'm always surprised about this. The answer remains the correct answer no matter how many times you ask the question. You go to the doctor and he's going to tell you lose weight and exercise. Quit smoking if you're a smoker. It doesn't matter how many times you go to him, he's going to give you the same advice. Can't you do something else for me? Nope. When I went to my diabetes doctor, the first number of times, whatever that number is, he used to tell me, don't eat this, don't eat that. Towards the end, he would just say, don't eat. Just don't eat. That's it. Don't eat, exercise. But people say to me, Abba, how do you understand this? How do you explain this? I always used to say, I'm always troubled by the question, how do you explain the death of a young person? Because the implication is, I'm okay with the death of an old person. But being an older person, I'm not ready to go yet. I would like to think that if I died, it was a tragedy. But evidently, there's a certain age where we're okay if they die. Well, we're okay now. It's no longer a question. Every death is a tragedy. It doesn't matter at what age the death takes place. And there's only one way to look at it. Everyone's going to die. You are born with a terminal condition. You are going to die. That's a fact. Everyone's going to die. We don't know when. We don't know how. We don't get to choose it. But there's going to come a time in everybody's life when it ends. It's shocking. I feel like I told this story recently, but I flew in because they said my father was dying. They didn't think he would make it. I got there Friday morning. He died Friday night. And I was obviously quite jet lagged. And Shabbos, I went to lie down about 3 o'clock in the morning. My brother woke me up and said, Dad was nifter. And my first reaction was, can't be. Can't be. Because death is a shock. Nobody's supposed to die. Because Baruch Hu created the world that nobody was supposed to die. The Das Canaan, where Moshe Rabbeinu says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why do I have to die? I didn't do anything wrong. He says, because of the Ched of Adam HaRishon, that's how it is. Built into the world, everyone is going to die. And some people will die in their 90s, nebuch, without all their faculties. And the family will sit shiva and they'll say, it was time already. He was old, he was in pain, and it's all right. And sometimes people will die as a young person. And go console a parent. Had a neighbor who lost a 2-year-old, meningitis. And she said, the saddest part is the lack of potential. I never get to see her grow up, go to school, get married, have a life. My Rabbi Yaakov Whale, that's who was carried me when I was in 8th grade. He lost his father, who was over 100 years old. And I was young then. And I said, well, I guess it's easier because he was over 100 long life, and he burst into tears. And I was surprised. He said, they reach a certain age and you don't think they're ever going to die. So everyone's going to die. It's just how it is. This is called the Olam HaSheker. This is a world of illusion. It's not real. We're not meant to be here. We're meant to be in Olam Haba. We're meant to be in the real world. Ha'olam is Olam Haba. This world is an entrance hall. We're going someplace. We're here to do something. I have friends here in Har Nov. Their teenage son fell off his bicycle, hit his head, and passed away. And we were with a chevra, and we were all saying, what do you say? So this one Rav says, what do you mean? I went over right away. So what did you say? So the Gemara says that if a person dies under 20, it's not because they did anything wrong, it's not a punishment. It can't be anything other than the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent them back down to this world for a limited period of time. So there was a neshama that lived a very long life and got up to Shemayim and did bad things. and was going to have a tikkun. And Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll give you a chance to come back down to the world, to repair the things that you did. He says, okay, I'll take it. He says, all right, you'll live another 70 years. He said, 70 years? What, I didn't do anything good? All right, 40 years. 40 years? 40 years? You're telling me that 40 years of my 70 years was no good, And he handles until he gets God down to 16 years. All right, you only have to stay down there 16 years. You'll get your kapara and then you can come up. This is very hard for us to process because we're left behind. Like the song on Journeys 1 about the two brothers in the womb, where one of them is born and this twin thinks that he died. Please don't mourn me when my life has just begun. And he tells his twin, soon you'll be here with me in this world to come. Meaning you'll be born too and come to this world. But this world's not the real world. It's an illusion. We get so attached to it. We think it's so real. We know this. We hear this all the time. We just don't believe it. The wealthy man says to the Chavetz Chaim, this is how you live. You don't have a couch. You don't have drapes. You don't have a rug. He says to the wealthy man, you have all those things? I'd love to see them. He said, well, I don't have them with me. I'm just passing through. Says the Chavetz Chaim, I'm also just passing through. We're in this world to accomplish something. We don't choose, as it says in Pirkei Avos, against your will you're born and against your will you die. No one's consulting you on any of this. You come down into this world, you're given a certain amount of time, and that's it. Come on. Could anyone have anticipated this? I know everyone's sending out tweets, but for years and years, people can go to Meron. Somebody slipped and the door and the gate was closed, and then people fell on top of them. Can you anticipate this? It happened because Kadosh Baruch Hu decided that these people's time was up. Why did it? Okay, you need a Navi. Only a Navi can tell you why. I'm not a Navi. I can't tell you why. I can't answer mystical, esoteric questions. And I'm not one of the Chachamim. I don't have Ruach HaKodesh. They asked Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, why were the Jews at the time of the Purim story deserving to be destroyed? They didn't know. So we all know, because Rav Shimon Bar Yochai told us, because they went to Achashverosh's party, but they didn't make that association because it was 9 years apart. I can't. Who's going to tell you? Anyone who tells you why this happened or that happened, nobody knows why. All you can do is look for patterns, look for associations. There are some poskim who say you have to keep a veilus during the night of Lag BaOmer. And in Israel, we don't hold that way. But there are people who do. Because according to that Shita, the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva also died on Lag BaOmer. And so during Lag BaOmer, during the day, you don't have to keep the Avelis. Why? Because Mixas Yom Kakulai, when you have 7 days of Shiva, on the seventh day, you just sit a little bit and then you get up. You don't have to keep the whole day. Mixas Yom Kakulai, that's the rule. Part of the day is like the whole day. So the fact that people died on Lag BaOmer night, according to that point of view, it's not such a mystery. In any event, Lag BaOmer is, of course, a happy day. Why? Because the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. My son was 4 years old. He came back from God. And I said, what did you learn? He said, I learned about Lag BaOmer. I said, what did you learn? He says, Lag BaOmer is a happy day because the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. 4 years old. My Yaakov, he's been on the podcast. He looks at me and he says, but Abba, that's because they were all dead. Well, yeah. 24,000 Talmidim Rabbi Akiva died. The fact that they finished dying is only because there was nobody left to die. The Pri Chodesh and Shulchan Aruch asked this question. So what's the Simcha? And he says the Simcha is the last 5 Talmidim. Rabbi Akiva, advanced and aged, went out and found another 5 Talmidim and started over. Rabbi Akiva was 40 years old. He was an Amoritz. He couldn't read Aleph Beis. And he manages to go and sit in a little cheder with little children, learn the Aleph Beis. 24 years to the age of 66. Eventually, he has 24,000 Talmidim, and these 24,000 Talmidim became the leaders of Klal Yisrael. And every single day, hundreds of them died. And after he buried his last Talmud, that's it. He's an old man. He's experienced tragedy that is difficult to comprehend. Today we say post-traumatic stress disorder. Give up. He looks around and he finds 5 more people who are ready to be Talmidim. They were not on the level of his 24,000. Says Rabbi Akiva was able to learn even from the crowns on the letters of the Torah. That Torah he gave to those 24,000, not to the others. He started over again. It must be hard having a job, being in charge of a yeshiva of 24,000 and then go to 5. It's got to be hard. But Rabbi Akiva looked at what had to be done, picked himself up, brushed himself off, and started again. That's the power of Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer isn't everything goes well, as my son said. They all died. It wasn't like we davened and then we saved the day and they didn't die. They all died. Every last one of them died. The simcha of Lag BaOmer is that you can pick yourself up afterwards and keep going. Klausenberger Rebbe survived the Holocaust, lost his wife and children, came to Israel, got remarried again, got more children, built sons. Where do you get that strength? That's Lag BaOmer. Anytime somebody finds the power to pick themselves up and keep going, in spite of all of the difficulties and challenges, it's easy to give up. That's fact. If you want to. Or you could Lahavdil, as it says at the end of Fiddle on the Roof, Rabbi, wouldn't this be a good time for the Messiah to come? Yes, but until he does, we'll just have to wait for him someplace else. And so we Jews have faced disappointment and tragedy over and over again, and we pick ourselves up. That's Lag BaOmer. And as we go into Golus, Kosh Baruch Hu comes with us. Avraham Avinu wants to save the metropolis known as Stone, 5 cities. And he says to Kosh Baruch Hu, maybe there are 50 tzaddikim. Maybe there are 40, maybe there are 30, maybe there are 20, maybe there are 10. Rashi says he was hoping to save all 5 cities, 10 for each city. If not, save 4 cities, not 3 cities, 2 cities. But there's one other number that's thrown in there, 45. 45 is 9 for each city, and let HaKadosh Baruch Hu be mitzdaref. 45 tzaddikim, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu being mitzdaref. Listen, I'm not a Navi, and I'm not a Chacham. But after following a year of a pandemic, so many people who passed away, So many people who suffered financial losses. So many people who still haven't completely recovered. I still don't have my taste and smell back from the coronavirus. After all these things that happened, the power to keep going isn't like Bowman. Listen, is there a message in this for us? Yeah. The fact that Kodesh Baruch Hu watched over us every year, and this year he didn't, there's a message in it. I'm not big enough to try to figure out what it is, but this much is for sure. Everybody came together. Everyone crushed together, young and old, Hasidish and Yeshivish, Americans and Israelis. Dati Leumi and Haredi. Gentlemen, if we do not hang together, then we shall surely hang separately. There's a message, especially as we go into Shavuos. There are 600,000 Jews and 600,000 letters in the Sefer Torah because every Jew is important. And all of us are responsible for each other. The Gemara says in Gittin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, put a sign on every tzaddik so that when the destruction comes, they'll be saved. Says the Satan. Why should they be saved? They didn't give Mussar. They didn't try to help everybody else. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, but I know that if they did, nobody would have listened. He says, you know that, but they don't know that. And Hashem says, you're right. Put a sign on their head, they're going to be the first to go. I've been asked the question over the years, I never really fully understood it, but I've been asked the question, why did tzaddikim die in the Holocaust? Sometimes I get asked this by secular people. Why did the Orthodox people die? I said, because we practice what you preach. You talk about Achdus, we're one people. We actually believe it. As the famous Yerushalmi always says, if your right hand is cutting a piece of meat and by accident cuts your left hand doesn't pick up the knife and cut the right hand. Because you understand you're one body, you're one people. It's not us and them. Rabbin government, they were trying to get Degel Torah to join. And he says, we're not going to join if you give the education ministry the merits. So they said, okay, we'll make a separate Haredi education ministry and you could be in charge of that. And Shah said, you think we only care about our children? You think we don't care about every Jewish child? That's a mistake. We're all in this together. And we have to feel that sense of obligation. Vayachanu b'midbar, lashon rabim, plural. Vayichan sham, and then singularly we all came together. We're all going to be together. If it kills us. Halavai, we can do it. Why were these 45 people chosen? That's God's department. I don't know. I can't explain who he chose. I will tell you what I said when Nebuch the 2 bus blew up here in Yerushalayim. And they had a cross section of people they were discussing. And each one was a bigger tzaddik than the next. And I said to my wife, well, at least I'm safe because he's only taking the tzaddikim. I don't know how these cheshbonos are made. But special people were taken. But they were taken for all of us. We're all one people. There's no us and them. Mitzvah Hashem, we should come out of this and not know any more tragedies. Go into a simcha, Kabbalah Satira, of Achdus, and everyone joining together. And that's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the Rabbi Orlofsky show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com, make comments, sponsor an episode, and you can contact me, and that's it. I'm Dovid Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.